Too ideologically resistant to the idea of medicating depression. A major scientific study, the largest ever of its kind, suggests that more than 1 million extra people should be offered antidepressants or other treatments, and we should not be squeamish about treating mental health problems with drugs. But they also recommended that Prozac, one of the best known but they claim least successful, be swapped for others that consistently perform better. Katie Razzle has the story.
I don't know if you've ever been driving and you just miss running over a child and you feel completely sick in your whole body. It felt like that, but it never stopped. Or, I don't know if ever you have been on a plane where there's an emergency landing and you think you're going to die. It was like that, but it just didn't stop. I had this feeling I was going to fall and the pit was bottomless and I had to hold on for dear life.
It's estimated mental illness affects 1 in 4 people in the UK each year. For many of them, today's study may be welcome news. The drugs work for moderate to acute depression, is the message, though some antidepressants are more effective than others. The number of prescriptions for antidepressants in the UK has doubled over the 10 years between 2006 and 2016. There may be some over-prescription, those behind the report accept, if the drugs are given for mild depression. But the bigger issue for them is the 1 million people in the UK who are missing out on treatment entirely.
The big problem is that there's a huge proportion of patients who need the treatment because they have moderate to severe major depression and they do not receive an effective treatment. When I say effective treatment, I mean either pharmacological antidepressants or psychological. And the other big problem is untreated depression can be fatal.
Rachel Kelly had her first serious episode of anxiety-driven depression when she was in her 30s.
I was suicidal and I was screaming and saying I wanted to die and I felt so ill.
She spent a couple of years on antidepressants then and again a few years later. With such a stigma still around mental illness and antidepressants, she believes today's report will help.
I think I felt a sense of relief because I think it's bad enough feeling very depressed and then to also worry whether the treatment's the right treatment or the wrong treatment. I think my experience is when you are severely unwell and if you are in hospital and you are suicidal, in a way the whole debate is bonkers when you are that unwell. You are going to try and find drugs to get you better.
But research shows that while more than 90% of the world's big pharmaceutical companies were investing in researching new drugs for psychiatric conditions like depression and schizophrenia back in 2012, now only 27% of them are doing so.
We need to innovate and find new treatments to help people feeling better. That's the big challenge for the future.
And are you saying that at the moment the pharmaceutical companies aren't doing that?
No, because at the moment it's not cost effective for them.
Some psychiatrists believe the use of antidepressants on a day-to-day basis is already too high, so there is some resistance to the suggestion in today's report that more people should be given the option of drugs.
So long-term use of antidepressants can cause physical adverse effects, including sexual impairment, and sometimes that can persist when people stop taking the medication. They can cause suicidal and sometimes aggressive impulses in young people in particular. They can cause fetal abnormalities and they can cause very prolonged and severe withdrawal syndromes in some people when they try and stop them. And the mental impact of long-term treatment I also think is significant because they give people the message that they need treatment and that they are not able to manage their problems themselves.
It was a stigma to take the drugs.
When Rachel Kelly was ill, antidepressants were the answer, though she says ideally drugs would be used only in the short term and they aren't the only solution. Talking therapy, mindfulness, diet and even Sammy the dog have all played a part in her recovery. She's kept the card on which a psychiatrist wrote a message when she was at her bleakest.
It says you will get better, and I used to hold on to this card for dear life. I sit here as someone who's well now and I did get better. And, you know, other people will get better. So anybody who's watching who's feeling a bit emotional, but anybody who's out there who is suffering, my heart goes out to you and I wouldn't wish it on anyone. But I do believe firmly that you can get better.
Rachel Kelly ending that report by Katie Razzle. Well, joining us here, James Davis, psychotherapist, and Dr. Helen Stokes-Lampard, practicing GP and chair of the Royal College of GPs. It's very nice to have you both in. And Helen, when you first saw this study, what was your reaction?
My first reaction was that I don't think any GP in the country will be surprised to hear that in many people the drugs do work. We don't prescribe antidepressants thoughtlessly. We do it with the best interest of the patient in front of us in mind. We do it because we see that they benefit many, many patients. But that's only one part of the way of treating depression.
Do you think it will liberate more GPs to hand out pills? Do you think it will make it easier for more people to ask for them, or has that not been a problem?
It'll certainly make it easier for some people to overcome the stigma to come forth and ask for medication. I don't think GPs have been inhibited of having the conversation and offering medication, but actually, as I said, we need the time to have those open conversations with our patients. We need the range of treatment options available to us. And I think this is really helpful. It clarifies certain things, and you know, there's been a lot of myth in the media about this whole area, so it's good to have the conversation.
And James, that's a pretty good step, isn't it, if it raises the stigma and just lets people start talking about this?
Oh, well, I think anything that helps people go forward and speak to people about their emotional difficulties is very positive. But we're very deeply concerned about this study, in particular because it actually tells us nothing that we don't already know. The research says that the difference between antidepressants and placebo is very minor, in fact, clinically insignificant. What that means is that there's hardly any register in the difference between in a person's real-world experience. So these differences are remarkably minor.
But when you read that it suggests up to 1 million more people would benefit from having treatment, drugs of some kind, do you agree with that? No,
I don't agree with that at all. I think that's an overstatement. Unlike placebos, antidepressants have side effects for between 40 to 70% of people, depending on the study you consult. They also generate withdrawal effects for around 2/3 of patients. In a large cohort of those persons, those withdrawal effects are severe and protracted, lasting for many months, and in certain cases, many years. So we're very concerned that this study is being spun in such a way as to wrongly lead people to believe these drugs are more efficacious and safe than in fact they are.
Do you believe that there is under-medication in this country?
There's absolutely under-medication, just as there is some over-medication. You know, this is one of those difficult areas where some people come forth and want tablets and they're not the right thing. Others are reluctant to come forward and have the conversation where medication may be of benefit. And whilst I recognise some of what James is saying about the study, actually this is
the withdrawal.
Oh, certainly withdrawal. Some people, this isn't the same kind of addiction. It's not like being addicted to cocaine or nicotine. It's a different sort of experience people have when they try to come off medication. It needs to be done slowly and gradually and in a supported way.
But it is hard, isn't it? I mean,
for some people it is, yes.
Right. So do you actually explain this when you're going through this? You know, you might hand it out for a short length of time and people might find it can't be.
In general, you don't aim to hand them out for a short period of time. These are drugs designed to be taken for a minimum of 6 months following benefit. So if you get benefit for them, at least 6 months. So they're never designed to be short-term uses. And there are some myths about that too. And so we always have that conversation.
Do you think this is about saving money? I mean, do you think this is a sort of an encouragement to say, you know, a medication is much quicker than therapy and talk?
Money plays a huge role in this. Of course, if you look at the research says that most people who approach their GPs for help with their emotional problems would prefer some kind of psychological therapy or talking intervention. Unfortunately, what they end up with is an antidepressant in most cases because provision for non-drug alternatives is woefully low. But can I just
We'd agree on that, absolutely. There certainly isn't enough talking therapy available on the NHS, and waiting times are a problem.
Yeah, and can I just make one more point, if I may? This research looked at people who were taking the drugs for 8 weeks only. The vast majority of people in the UK are taking these medications for many, many months, and in many cases, many years. So the relevance of this finding for that cohort of patient is in question.
But it is the biggest study ever.
Thank you. Thank you. If you do need details of organisations which offer support with mental health, you can find them at bbc.co.uk/actionline, or you can call for free at any time to hear recorded information on 08000 564 756.